how does a company like Arlon come to exist? I couldn't even imagine it. Like, okay, we're going to create vinyl with an adhesive background, and then we're going to start doing different color stuff. How did Arlon even come to be?
Yeah. So Arlon's been around since 1958, so 66 years and counting. But we weren't making vinyl all of those 66 years. So Arlon was a converting company making different types of tapes for different industries, not just for the graphic industry. And it turned out that somewhere in the 70s, and this is before my time, of course, or even being in the industry, but in the 70s, they, started converting vinyl films into pinstripes because it was really popular. If you think back to some classic cars, pretty much everything came off the dealership lot with a stripe on it. And it used to be done in the factory, and then it became something that turned out to be a skill. And there were, groups of guys running around putting pinstripes on cars. So Arlon was buying film already made and converting it into different types of stripe patterns and so on. And of course, that got really popular. And the companies that we were buying the film from said, well, wait a minute, we can convert vinyl as well. Why don't we make that as well? And then vinyl became difficult for us to get our hands on. So it was either we continue with the tapes side of things, or if we really like what we're doing, we think we have a big enough market in pinstripes, we should try making vinyl ourselves. So we did. And that was at the beginning of the 80s. And by the mid 80s, we were very strong with learning how to cast, learning how to coat adhesives, and of course still converting our own films. But it turned out that the plotter, you mentioned plotters, that was kind of a mesmerizing thing when you were a kid coming in and seeing these things. And when plotters first began in the 80s, they needed wide width, wider format. Now keep in mind, we're talking 24 inches at that time, but wider format sproggeted vinyl. And Arlon, we said, hey, we're making film for ourselves to convert. We could sell this through distribution. And we started doing that. And we had a really nice color range. And that was the sort of genesis of Arlon's product line today. But, we did that with cast film and we're successful with it. But we were a small company on the West Coast, not really well known in the industry until one of the sort of big moments for us. And it was, I think I wasn't with Arlon then, so if I get the dates wrong a little bit, bear with me, but somewhere in the early 90s, which is when I started in the industry 32 years ago, we started converting calendared films as well. So we would coat calendared films with adhesive and liners and start, because no one was using calendared films for pigmented colors at that time. So here was a way to have a product that was a bit of a cost saving, that you could do more turn and burn graphics with at that lower cost and still have a color range because digital wasn't around. And so Arlon was the first, I think it was called Calon at that time, the calendared version, which kind of makes sense. And so we were the leaders in that field, and that's what really put us on the map.
Okay.
And then, since then, digital printers came around in the early 2000s and maybe a little bit before that, but got really popular then. And then we had to worry about adhesives that were repositionable because installers were now wrapping things. And then, of course, air egress, we had to come out with that. So it's been nothing but innovation after innovation. And, the really fun thing right now for us is that we still have the latest innovation in low contact adhesive systems called flight technology. And there still isn't a film system like it out there that really makes it easy for installers to wrap vehicles and, reposition and be able to move along at a nice clip. So that innovation still stands. And, that was 5 or 6 years ago. So we haven't kept our eye off the ball, that's for sure, on trying to make sure that, we're coming up with films that are going to make our sign shops, more profitable and more productive.